Let's talk about setting up a brand new chisel or honing and sharpening an existing chisel. Now I'm lucky enough to have a brand new set of chisels that I need to get ready to use in my shop. The basic concept for tuning up a brand new chisel or sharpening an existing chisel is to get the back or flat of the chisel to exactly meet the front or the bevel with zero radius and a highly polished edge. So to get the two planes to exactly intersect and get it highly polished, that will give you a razor sharp edge. Now there are a variety of methods for doing this, and they're all equally valid, and they're all trying to get that exact same result. The method that I like to use in my shop is called hollow grinding the bevel, and then I'll freehand hone that on Waterstones. And the reason I like this is because it's very fast to tune up that edge while I'm working. Now the downside of this method is that I do need to grind the front. It takes a bit of extra time, especially on a new chisel. And every now and then I need to go back to the grinder and reestablish that hollow grind. But what I like about it is while I'm working, when the edge gets a little bit dull, I can take it to my highest grit stone, just a few passes freehand without having to set up a jig, and I am back up and running. 10 or 15 seconds later, I'm back at my work. That's what I love about this method. So let me go ahead and show you my whole process on a brand new chisel, which includes flattening the back, and take you step by step how I accomplish a razor sharp edge on a chisel. Now here's a close-up view of a brand new chisel. And again, what I want to do is get a perfect intersection between the back of the chisel, the flat, and the front, or the bevel, and have those meet perfectly along the whole edge. Now I'm using Norton Waterstones for doing my flattening here and my sharpening, and I'm going to start with a 1000 grit here and start working on the back of this. Again, this is a brand new chisel, so I'm going to work on the back with that 1000 grit. Put it on the stone and back and forth, holding it down, you know, all the way. I keep about a 45-degree angle. It's easier to hold it down nicely. And just back and forth, creating a scratch pattern on the back. Stop before lifting it off and wipe it off, and you can notice a scratch pattern beginning to develop. So I also like this 45 degrees. You can notice a scratch pattern more easily where it's flattening, and I want to make sure that I get that consistent scratch pattern all the way across the back. So I can see my 45 scratches here and right here, and I need to get it here in the middle all the way to the tip. So I need to make sure I'm getting in these areas all the way across. If I need to step down to a 220 to quickly get rid of some material, I can do that as well, and then back to the 1000, and then work my way up to 8000. Again, brand new chisel, so I've got to work the back a little bit more. If I had an existing chisel, I would have done this. You only need to do this process once. Now I'm obviously dealing with water and Waterstones, so I put, this is just a jelly roll pan to contain the water mess, and splashing water constantly on these stones, keeping them clear of the grit that builds up on them. And I also have a non-skid pad here so the stone isn't moving around. Now I'm just about there with this chisel. You can see that this is about 2 or 3 minutes of work. You can see a consistent scratch pattern, especially all the way across the front edge. There's a little bit of a hollow here, and I haven't worked really this far back, which doesn't matter. And the hollow there doesn't matter as long as I'm good along my edges, and especially all the way, consistent scratch pattern along the front. Now one thing to be aware of is that your stones need to be flat. Whenever you're working on chisels or irons, whatever you're working on needs to be perfectly flat. And so we have to go through and make sure that this is constantly flat. These Norton Waterstones especially wear very quickly, which is why they cut quickly, but the stones will go out of flat very quickly. Every 30 seconds or 1 minute that I'm working on this chisel, this stone is getting out of flat. So to flatten it, I've got a DMT Dia-Flat plate here, and I will make a crosshatch pattern on my stone and run that back and forth diagonally, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, other way, diagonally, and then kind of back and forth using the whole plate. and you can see my crosshatch is almost gone. There's still a little bit on one corner here. Let's take a look. Right here you can still see a couple of pencil marks. I can still make out a couple of pencil marks there. So I want to go ahead and flatten it one more time. And now we're looking good, perfectly flat again, and I'll go ahead and finish up this chisel. Now that I've got the back flat, I want to go ahead and start polishing it, and I've got Norton combination stone here of 4,000 and 8,000, so I'll work on the 4,000 and the 8,000. And if I'm having a hard time seeing the new scratch pattern or the polish, I can switch to the other side and run the 45 on the other side and see the difference. You know, watch the scratches start going the other direction until I've removed all the previous scratches before I move on to the next stone. And finally, I'll reflatten my 8,000 grit one last time and use light pressure in and out just on the very tip to get a final polish right there on the tip. And we can see that here with the 8,000 grit. A little bit hollowed there just back as we saw earlier, but nicely polished all the way to the tip. And it's fine for a hollow to be in the center there, and we only need to work the last few inches. So we're all set now with the back of this. Time to move over to the front. I use a hollow grind method, and so I'm here at the grinder. This chisel has not been ground yet. It's got a flat grind right from the manufacturer, so I'm going to hollow grind that out, and I'm using a 25-degree angle. That's actually what this one came from the manufacturer. That's a pretty good standard angle for a bench chisel. My paring chisels, I'll go down to about 20 degrees. My bench chisel is usually about 30 degrees maybe, but 25 is a good all-around degree for chisel. So I'm going to go ahead and grind that here at the grinder to hollow grind out this bevel, which gives it a slight curve, which is going to make it really easy to freehand hone. I've now finished grinding on this chisel, and honestly that only took about a minute. The grinder starts, because I had it set at the correct angle, the grinder starts here kind of in the center and then works backwards and forwards, so the leading edge and back, as it hollow grinds that out. Obviously I had to be careful of the temperature, making sure that I didn't get too hot as I was grinding it. And the only thing I had to keep track of was making sure that I was square to the side. So every now and then I'd hold up my chisel to the light and make sure that I was being perfectly square to the side, making sure the front leading edge is perfectly square to the side. Other than that, you can make out the marks left from the grinder there on the front edge, and also the fact that now there's a little bit of a concave shape. It's no longer exactly flat, and that'll help us with our freehand honing. Now that I've got the hollow grind on the bevel, I'm going to go ahead and do some freehand honing, sharpening and polishing the front. I'm going to start with 1,000 grit Norton stone. And what I want to do is rock the chisel back and forth a little bit to find the very front and back. When you rock it, you'll feel exactly when you're touching the very tip and when you're touching this part back here, because the rest is hollowed out. And then I want to support the chisel, the weight of the chisel, with one hand, pressing down with one or more fingers on the front, supporting the weight of the chisel with my other hand, and I like to just pull it backwards. And as I'm going backwards, I try to lock my wrists, my hands, my elbows, shoulders, and just rock my upper body back. And therefore I'll keep the chisel at the correct angle the whole way. Now I want to use the whole stone, so I'll move around using the right hand side, left hand side in the middle, and I'll just do about 4 or 5 strokes and then turn it over and take a look. and you can see I'm starting to polish the corners and a little bit along the back, and I want to keep going until I've got it very consistent all the way along the front. You can see a little bit of polish at the corners, both at the leading edge and just back at the thick part of the steel. And I want to keep going a few more strokes until I get a polish all the way across that front leading edge. I've now done 4 or 5 more strokes, so a total of 8 to 10 strokes, and you can see I've almost got it all the way across the front. I think just a couple more strokes. I'm going to flatten this stone first and do a couple more strokes and then be able to move up to the next stones. Here you can see the polish all the way across from that 1000 grit across the front leading edge, and I can feel a burr all the way across. If I run my finger, I can feel a burr all the way across that leading edge. So I'm now ready to go up to the 4000 and the 8000. After moving up to the 8000 grit, now you can see a really nice polish all the way across the front and just a tiny burr along the backside that I now need to remove. I'll go ahead and remove the burr on the back by just giving it a couple of strokes on and off the stone. Now sometimes that burr, when I remove it from the back, actually flips over to the front of the chisel. So if you can feel a burr moved over to the front, just go ahead and work back to the bevel side. Do about 1 stroke down the stone, and then check again and see if it's moved over. And you could do, sometimes I'll do just a couple of hones on the bevel side, and then back to the back, 1 or 2 strokes. And that should go ahead and polish up the edge really nicely. Well, now that we've tuned up our chisel, let's check it out in action. This is the end grain on some white pine, and I'm just going to take some shavings right here from the end and check it out. Nice curl of end grain popping up there. Pretty smooth finish being left behind by this chisel on this end grain. Not bad. Now let's compare that to a factory chisel, which I've done nothing to. This is straight from the factory. And I'll go ahead and try to push that right through this end grain. You can see a lot more tear out and a little bit more cloudy finish. You know, it's not curling up, more tearing, and you can see the gaps opening up in that end grain, you know, compared to our sharp chisel. So that's straight from the factory. And let me go ahead and back to the one that we've tuned up. Get a nice curl and much smoother finish to that end grain. So that is my method for tuning up a new chisel or sharpening an existing chisel. And I like this method because now it is really fast for me to hone this chisel as I'm working. When it dulls a little bit, I simply go back to my 8000 stone, few strokes on the bevel, remove the burr, and I'm back up and running. Literally takes 10 or 15 seconds. And that's why I really like this method. But there's a lot of methods you can use for tuning up a chisel, sharpening a chisel, a lot of different ways to go about it. All of them are equally valid. They're all trying to achieve the same result, which is having the back and the front of the chisel meet at a perfect point, highly polished to get a razor sharp edge. Well, I've got 1 chisel done. I've got quite a few more to go.